For years, whispers floated. For years, rumors festered. And for years, everyone stayed quiet. Until now, because Tasha K finally spilled, and the reality TV world is buzzing like never before. Just days ago, when Porsha Williams went public about her sexuality, the internet gushed about growth, healing, and self-discovery. But according to the chatter now circulating, that glossy story might be only half true. Sources claim Porsha's awakening isn't exactly fresh. It's more like a carefully timed peek into a secret double life she's been living all along. And it's not just alleged flings with men. Women are apparently part of the picture too. Old screenshots, reality show clips, and vintage party footage once shrugged off as gossip are now under a microscope, forming a pattern that's far more tangled. And here's the kicker. Tasha K isn't stopping at cheating allegations. She's diving into even darker territory. She's also waving the flag on what she claims is a seriously messy health scandal that's been conveniently hidden from the public. Secrets, risks, and warnings from people close to Porsha Williams, all quietly ignored, are now bubbling up. The internet? Divided. Some scream clout chase. Others argue, when this many whispers sync up, something smells fishy. Because this isn't just about sexuality anymore. It's about trust, betrayal, and what happens when secrets refuse to stay buried. And the juiciest question? If none of this is true, why is the chatter only getting louder? Music drops, screen cuts to black, text flashes, and one thing's clear. This story is far from over, and the next reveal might just blow the roof off.
Like I said, absolutely nothing. But then something kind of piqued my interest about this conversation here, because she started talking about, because of my marriage, I think I'm gay. I'd consider being gay. You don't consider being gay, but go ahead, Porsha.
Lonely. I can't connect with other men. It's like people trying to introduce me, but it's just when it's not the same, it's not the same. So I'm going to do it different this time. I'm going to be alone until I'm whole. And then when I'm whole, then I will, open myself back up so I don't make the same mistake again.
How wide we talking?
When you go through a bad enough breakup, you're like, I don't like nobody. Like, you're like, I don't like nobody. I was sitting there, I was like, do I like women enough? Can I get with a woman? Like, who can come in and fill this void? Like, oh my God, somebody, I have got to be able to sit with someone and feel.
For years, Porsha Williams carefully crafted the image of a woman who could survive anything: heartbreak, failed marriages, scandals, always bouncing back stronger than ever. That tough girl persona? Now under a magnifying glass. The internet once applauded her recent openness about her sexuality as brave and healing. But the new chatter is asking the hard-hitting question: genuine self-discovery or just slick damage control? Sources close to the scene say her decision to go public didn't come from nowhere. It followed years of whispers that refused to vanish. Whispers about secret behaviors, off-camera relationships, and a private life that looked nothing like the polished version fans were shown. And that's when Tasha K steps in, shaking things up. She's not calling this a breakthrough. She's calling it a reveal that's years overdue. According to her, what Porsha Williams spins as healing now was allegedly spotted long ago by those close to her, not as growth, but as a recurring pattern. A pattern of emotional distance, unexplained breakups, and, according to multiple sources, alleged intimacy with women long before the public ever caught a hint. What makes this whole drama extra combustible isn't just the claims themselves, it's the timing. Just days after the internet cheered Porsha for finding herself, critics started whispering something far more eyebrow-raising. Her words sounded less like self-discovery and more like a carefully crafted justification.
It'll come. But I'm like, and I think that now that I'm realizing that, because what I've decided is that I'm not going to look for it anymore. So I'm not going to push myself into dating or anyone or trying to figure out, who do I like, who could I be around, because this is probably also part of healing.
healing?
I mean, just sitting with this.
What's the healing?
Sitting with being alone, sitting with the loss, and let myself heal the loss. And I know I'm crying right now, but I feel good every day. Each day, I get better. Each day, I feel stronger. But
she lays it all out. No more chasing connection. She's going solo. Talks about healing, heartbreak, and emotional burnout. Admits it's tough. Admits she cries. Admits loneliness is now part of her daily routine. Sounds raw and real on the surface. But critics aren't buying it as healing. They see it as a full-on narrative reset. Instead of confronting rumors or past actions, the spotlight shifts to feelings, pain, vulnerability, and isolation, and that pivot is calculated. Media strategists call it classic misdirection. Don't deny, don't confirm, just humanize. And it worked at first. Clips went viral, fans cheered her bravery, supporters applauded her self-focus, yet skeptics were watching a different story unfold. Screenshots resurfaced, old reality show moments reappeared, and suddenly, the past was impossible to ignore. They resurfaced. Party footage from years back suddenly reads like a whole new story. Jokes that were once shrugged off. Playful interactions that now seem like puzzle pieces in a much bigger picture. Sources inside production reveal long-standing talks about Porsha Williams' behavior that never made it to air, discussions about boundaries, blurred lines, and cast members who allegedly felt uneasy but stayed quiet to dodge backlash. These stories were never confirmed, never denied, they just stayed buried until now. And here's where it gets even darker. Tasha K isn't just calling out infidelity, she's calling out exposure. According to her, some of Porsha's closest circle privately worried about more than just cheating. They were allegedly concerned about undisclosed health risks that never reached the public. These claims are heavy, and they're being worded cautiously. No documents have surfaced. No medical records leaked, yet the accusation alone flipped the entire conversation. This stopped being about identity, it became about responsibility. Sources claim questions were quietly raised about whether people involved with Porsha Williams were fully informed about potential risks. Those concerns were allegedly dismissed, ignored, or downplayed. And that's where things get deeply uncomfortable. Because if even part of this is true, the debate isn't about sexuality, it's about trust. Critics of Tasha K say she's reckless, attention-hungry, and exploiting a sensitive issue. Her supporters argue the opposite. When similar claims emerge from former partners, insiders, and media figures, it stops looking random. That's why the internet is split. One side calls it a targeted smear fueled by clout and bitterness. The other believes silence has shielded too much for far too long. Here's the detail that keeps popping up. None of this is new. These aren't fresh rumors. They're old whispers getting a second wind. And when Porsha Williams decided to go public, framing everything as healing, critics argue she seriously underestimated how closely eyes were glued. In the era of archived clips and digital memory, stories don't vanish, they wait. Legal experts are already whispering about possible fallout. Not because anything's been proven, but because implications are screaming. Cease and desist letters, hush settlements, preemptive statements, standard moves when allegations hit this level of attention. Yet so far, no lawsuits. No denials, no clarifications, just silence. And in situations like this, silence is never innocent. Because while words are missing, something else is growing louder. Fear. Fear of unseen footage. Fear of private messages leaking. Fear that those who once stayed quiet might finally decide to stop shielding someone else's reputation. It's all about positioning. Porsha Williams casts herself as healing. Tasha K casts herself as the exposer. And the audience? Stuck in the middle, trying to figure out which side smells more like truth. The juiciest question remains unanswered. If this is all false, why hasn't it been squashed? And if even a sliver is true, how long until the next leak sends this spiral out of control? What started as a discussion about identity has morphed into something far heavier, a test of credibility, accountability, and just how many secrets survive once silence shatters. By now, the story has left healing behind. It's deep in contradiction. Porsha frames her recent words as personal growth, but critics are digging into something far messier: her past. Not old tweets, not offhand jokes, public statements on record. That's when the narrative starts to splinter. Analysts agree. The problem isn't that Porsha discussed her sexuality, it's how violently that clashes with her previous stance. And here, Tasha K moves from mere observer to full-on accuser.
Ho! Ho! The gay part really kind of made me go, not Porsha. Really, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go that you've been abused by so many men, even though you went looking for this lady's husband. Got him, didn't even tell him why you wanted a divorce. Didn't even tell him you wanted a divorce, just divorced him. Didn't answer no question. It's like, oh, you hurt, you're going through so much. And now you're like, will a woman be with me? Wasn't there talks, I think, between her and Drew of Porsha allegedly like sleeping with women, or was it Candy? What? It was one of the.
In this segment, the tone sharpens. The host doesn't hold back, openly questioning why Porsha Williams would suddenly drop sexuality into the mix after dodging similar rumors for years. The framing is unmistakable. Really, we're digging in. This isn't curiosity, it's pure skepticism. Commentary suggests this moment reads less like honesty and more like a strategic pivot, a way to spin long-standing rumors into a self-discovery narrative instead of owning up. Enter the word performative. Critics say emotional framing is the classic shield against scrutiny. Make it about pain and healing, and suddenly asking tough questions looks cruel. And yet, the scrutiny didn't stop, because some viewers remembered something older, something documented, something that refuses to be ignored.
They always said Porsha ain't coochie, but listen, here's the thing. But it just put me in the mind frame of like, wasn't she preaching back in the day against LGBTQism? Didn't she preach and say it was against God the whole time? And now you considering whether or not you should be with a woman? These women better hide their purses out here for real. Hide your Birkins. She gonna take them. Go ahead, Porsha.
Archived footage surfaces from before Porsha Williams' reality TV days, showing her delivering a religious message that painted LGBTQ identities as something to fix, pray over, or save. The contrast couldn't be sharper. On one side, a woman speaking about fluidity, loneliness, and openness. On the other, the same woman publicly condemning the very identities she now appears to embrace. Critics call it not growth, but contradiction without explanation, and the audience noticed. Clips from that sermon spread online within hours. Side-by-side comparisons flooded social media. Comment sections erupted with the same burning question: which version is real? Supporters say people evolve, beliefs change, and growth isn't linear. Skeptics push back. Growth demands acknowledgement, and accountability demands clarity. According to them, neither has been offered. Instead, what followed? Silence. No clarification, no apology, no context. Just a sudden new narrative conveniently spinning years of rumors into a personal awakening. That's why this chapter refuses to fade. Sources familiar with the situation say whispers about Porsha Williams' alleged relationships with women didn't come from fans. They allegedly came from people in her inner circles: industry insiders, production staff, other cast members. None of this has been proven, yet the consistency of the claims is raising serious eyebrows. And consistency is dangerous. When multiple people from different places tell variations of the same story, it becomes far harder to shrug it off as coincidence. That's when narratives start to crumble. It's also where the health allegations creep back in, not as isolated claims, but as part of a wider pattern of secrecy. According to circulating reports, those close to Porsha allegedly voiced concerns about transparency in her relationships, not just emotional transparency, but physical as well. Responsibility. These claims are still unverified. No documents have surfaced. No official statements have been issued. Yet the mere suggestion has already shifted the conversation from idle gossip to serious concern. This isn't just about who someone loves, it's about what is shared and what is hidden. Legal analysts point out that once allegations touch on health, the stakes skyrocket. Rumor becomes risk. Entertainment turns into liability. That's why many see this as the calm before a storm. Silence at this stage is deliberate. If legal action were imminent, statements would be measured. If evidence were weak, denials would be immediate. If everything were false, corrections would be aggressive. Instead, nothing. And that nothing is fueling speculation online. The debate has now split sharply into two camps. One side claims Tasha K is milking controversy, recycling old rumors just to stay relevant, pointing to her history of provocative claims and legal battles as evidence that this is performance, not truth. The other side insists this feels different, because unlike past scandals, this one didn't start with a leak. It began with Porsha Williams herself opening the door. And once that door cracked, people stormed in with receipts. Old footage, archived interviews, reality show clips that suddenly took on new meaning. Moments where boundaries blurred, interactions now reading entirely differently. Observers warn this is the danger of partial disclosure. Tell part of the story, and you invite others to fill in the rest. And the rest, they say, is what's next. Behind the scenes, insiders are reportedly bracing for fallout. Not public drama, but legal and strategic moves. Cease and desist letters, quiet warnings, private calls, yet none have appeared, which raises another question. Is someone hesitating because they don't know what else might surface? Because now, the fear isn't just allegations, it's evidence. Videos that haven't leaked, messages that haven't been shared, voices that haven't spoken. It's pressure, quietly mounting behind closed doors. Pressure on reputations, pressure on alliances. Once a narrative collapses publicly, it rarely rebuilds. Right now, the cracks are obvious. The past doesn't match the present. Sermons clash with statements, silence conflicts with noise. Until these contradictions are confronted, the story will only grow, not from rumor, but from unanswered questions. The most unsettling part? It's not what's been said. It's what hasn't. In scandals like this, truth rarely lands all at once. It leaks. And when it does, it never asks permission. Music dips low. If this were genuine growth, it wouldn't look so defensive. If it were mere rumor, it wouldn't be this loud. Some stories don't vanish, they wait. By now, the conversation has already moved far beyond speculation. What began as whispers evolved into patterns. What began as curiosity solidified into doubt, and what was once brushed off as rumors started feeling coordinated because after the interviews, after old footage resurfaced, and after contradictions were exposed, one thing became clear. The noise didn't fade, it exploded. Observers started recognizing a familiar shift, the kind that appears when public narratives hit a breaking point.
The tone changed.
Not louder, not sloppier, but quieter, tighter, more calculated, and then came silence. No urgent statements, no lengthy clarifications, no direct answers to the rising claims, only selective appearances, carefully crafted posts, and a clear dodge of specifics. Media analysts say this type of silence is rarely accidental. It's strategic. When allegations become too tangled to shut down cleanly, the safest play is often to say nothing and hope attention wanders. But here it didn't. Instead, people connected dots. They rechecked timelines. They rewatched old episodes. They dissected language, comparing then versus now. And what stood out was a clear pattern of selective disclosure, answers given vaguely, emotional framing replacing hard facts, accountability dodged in favor of sympathy. Critics argue this wasn't accidental vulnerability, it was narrative control. And that perception changed everything. Once an audience feels manipulated, trust erodes fast. And once broken, trust doesn't quietly return. At the eye of this storm are two opposing forces. On one side, Porsha Williams, a reality TV star whose brand thrives on openness, relatability, and emotional access. On the other, Tasha K., a provocative commentator who thrives in the murky space between allegation and exposure. But this story isn't just about either woman anymore. It's about what happens when public personas collide with unfinished histories. Because according to insiders close to the entertainment industry, the real anxiety isn't what's already been said, it's what's still missing. There is rising speculation that conversations are happening behind closed doors. Conversations involving lawyers, publicists, network executives, not about guilt, not about innocence, but about control. How far will this story go? How many people are tied in? And how much can realistically stay buried? Industry insiders note that when legal teams activate, the objective isn't always to fight, it's to freeze. Freeze dialogue, freeze leaks, freeze momentum. And yet, momentum keeps building. Because the internet doesn't run on silence, it runs on curiosity. Every unanswered question turns into theory. Every missing detail becomes a breadcrumb. And in this case, the lack of a firm denial has sounded louder than any statement ever could. Especially as more individuals quietly suggest they knew about things long before the public did. By anyone involved, hear nothing explicit, nothing concrete, just enough hints to keep the flames flickering. Analysts say this is the riskiest stage of any scandal, not the accusation, not the proof, but the implication. Because implications spark imagination, and imagination fills in gaps faster than facts ever could. That's why this moment feels different. Not chaotic, not explosive, but tense, like something ready to snap. Then there's legacy. For years, Porsha Williams' image has been meticulously crafted, not just as a reality star, but as a symbol of empowerment, someone who speaks up, survives, and grows. But critics argue growth demands confrontation, not avoidance. And that's why this story refuses to resolve. While the narrative leans on healing and self-acceptance, the past remains unaddressed. Sermons weren't explained. Contradictions weren't acknowledged. Rumors weren't faced head-on. Instead, the audience is asked to move forward without answers, and audiences rarely comply, especially when the stakes feel personal. Because for many viewers, this isn't just celebrity gossip. It's about honesty, accountability, and whether public figures owe clarity when their choices could impact others. And that's where the still unverified health allegations linger ominously in the background. Not as proof, not as fact, but as a possibility serious enough that legal experts warn it reshapes how everything else is interpreted. Because once allegations touch on responsibility and risk, silence stops seeming neutral. It starts to feel deliberate. And calculated silence invites scrutiny. Days pass, pressure mounts. Fans demand answers. Critics demand accountability. Supporters demand fairness. And still, no direct response, leaving the story suspended in an uncomfortable limbo, unresolved, undismissed, just waiting. Waiting for someone to blink, to speak, for the next leak, the next clip, the next voice that refuses to stay silent. History has taught the internet one thing: stories like this don't vanish. They evolve, resurfacing in unexpected ways at unexpected times, often catching those involved off guard. They freeze mid-breath, leaving one question louder than any allegation. If everything here is false, why hasn't it been shut down? And if even part of it is true, how long can it stay under wraps? Because when narratives crack, they don't quietly mend, they fracture. And when they fracture, the damage isn't always instant. Sometimes it waits. Music dips into a low, ominous hum. What makes stories like this dangerous isn't the allegations themselves, it's the silence that follows. Silence isn't neutral. It isn't accidental. It isn't empty. Silence is a choice. And when that choice is made, while questions linger, contradictions remain unresolved, and patterns unexplained, people start seeking answers elsewhere. That's where the internet steps in, not as a court, not as a judge, but as memory. A place where old footage doesn't vanish, where past statements don't expire, and where narratives don't reset just because someone wishes them to. This story was never only about sexuality. It was never just about rumors. It was never just one interview. It's about trust, transparency, and what happens when public figures demand understanding without offering clarity. Right now, two realities clash. One says this is all noise, clout chasing, exaggeration, and bitterness. The other says noise this loud never happens without friction simmering underneath. And the truth? It rarely announces itself all at once. It leaks. It surfaces. It waits for the perfect moment. So the real question isn't whether you believe everything you've heard. The question is sharper, far more uncomfortable. If none of this matters, why does it keep coming back? And if even part of it does, who benefits most from the silence? We'll keep watching. We'll keep tracking what's said, and what's left unsaid. And when the next piece drops, we'll break it down the same way. No hype, no clickbait, just the facts and the questions they raise. Think this story ends here? History says otherwise. Some truths don't disappear, they wait.
Subscribe.